welcome to the Gaithersburg Book Festival. My name is Yvette Monroe and I have the privilege of being here with you. I am a former Gaithersburg City Council member and a longtime Gaithersburg resident. We are pleased to bring you this fabulous festival in part by the generous support of our sponsors, including our title sponsor, the Carnegie at Washingtonian Center, and all of our volunteers. When you see them, please express your deep appreciation. Just a few announcements. Please silence all your devices. For the latest updates, make sure you're following the Gaithersburg Book Festival on Facebook and Twitter. Your feedback is valuable to us, so please take a few minutes to fill out a survey and submit it you go to the website and submit it at gaithersburgbookfestival.org or by using the QR code that you see around on the signs. By submitting a survey, you could be entered for a Visa gift card drawing. Our authors today, Gaithersburg. We're going to make you all Gaithersburg. Christine Gunderson, Aggie, Blum, Thompson, and our moderator, Liza Achilles, will be signing books at the Activity Center after this presentation. Just a quick note about books. Because it's a free event, it does help when you buy books. So buy lots of books for everybody. And make sure that when you do buy books, that it helps the publishers see that they should bring their authors here to this festival. So we want to make sure that we're encouraging and supporting the Politics and Prose bookstore. It helps benefit the local economy and provides support for local jobs. And by the way, Father's Day is coming, graduation, so they make good grades. So if you enjoy this program and you're in a position to do so, please make sure you buy books today. All right, and now about our authors. Christine Gunderson grew up on a fourth-generation farm in rural North Dakota where she read Little House on the Prairie. That early love of storytelling led her to a career in journalism and Capitol Hill, and now as a novelist. She lives in D.C. suburbs with her husband and 3 children. Her debut novel, Friends with Secrets, was so juicy. Was an Amazon bestseller and a July 2024 Amazon Editor's First Read Picks. It has been called a laugh out loud, fun homage to motherhood, and as a mother myself, my daughter's in the back, I can relate. Gunderson's characters feel so real, like people you know, or maybe they are people you know. And the story offers a reminder of strength that can come from unexpected places. Her next novel is set to release in 2026 with Lake Union. Before she became known for her domestic thrillers, Aggie Blum Thompson was a newspaper reporter covering everything from courtroom drama to the daily grind. She's written for the Boston Globe, the Washington Post, and her keen journalistic eye shines through in her novels. She lives also in the D.C. suburbs with her family. Her books, I Don't Forgive You, All the Dirty Secrets, Such a Lovely Family, and You Deserve to Know, are set in this area, peeling back the layers of suburban life to reveal dark secrets beneath the surface. You Deserve to Know especially resonated with me because it captures everyday rhythms of life. Then it slowly transforms in tension and simmering underneath. Her next book, by the way, I can't wait to see. Our moderator, Liza Achilles, is the author of 2 Novembers, a memoir of love and sex in sonnets, published by Beltway Editions in 2024. Her writing appeared in the Washington Independent Review of Books, the Beltway Poetry Quarterly, and many more. I truly find her work captivating, and I'm sure you will as well. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Christine Gunderson, Aggie Blum Thompson, and our moderator, Liza Achilles.
Thank you everyone for being here on this beautiful morning. I want to give a little introduction to these 2 amazing books. First of all, You Deserve to Know by Aggie, Blum, Thompson. There are three friends, Gwen, Amy, and Lisa, and they seem to have a lot in common. They all live in the same cul-de-sac in Bethesda. They all have a husband and kids, and they help each other out. They help each other out with childcare, and they also hang out and have a good time. But a murder shatters their tranquility, and they have to figure out what's going on. Publishers Weekly called it decadent, a stay-up-all-night page-turner, and I found that to be very true. The Washington Post called it a perceptive and beautifully assured piece of domestic noir. Friends with Secrets. Friends with Secrets by Christine Gunderson is about two friends, Ainsley and Nikki, who are perhaps they seem to have less in common on the surface. They both have a husband and kids, but Ainsley has a husband who's running for office, and she seems very put together, but she has a dark secret. Nikki is struggling with childcare, and she feels frazzled all the time, and she admires how put together Ainsley is. She has a former career in TV news, and she does media training. These two friends become closer, and they solve increasingly big problems. Liz Talley called the book Funny and Poignant, a feel-good book about balancing motherhood, friendship, and career. Sharon Peterson called it impossible to put down, be prepared for a book hangover, which I also found very true. All right. So these books have a lot in common. They're both set in the DC area, and I'd like to know how did you as a person inform these novels? So I wonder if the two of you could tell me a little bit about, where you're from, how long have you been living in the DC area, and how did that inform your novel? So let's start with Christine.
I've been living in the DC area probably for 25 years, but I grew up, as our lovely introduction stated, on a farm in rural North Dakota. I had 10 people in my high school class, the same 10 people from kindergarten through graduation. We lived an hour from the nearest McDonald's. It was a very blue-collar area. My grandfather had an 8th grade education. I was the first person in my family to go to college. So moving out here was kind of a culture shock. And I feel like, even though I've lived out here for a very long time, I sort of still feel like an anthropologist, where I am observing a culture that is very different from the one that I grew up in. And so I feel like it's kind of a superpower as a writer to have the ability to be an insider and an outsider at the same time, to be able to be part of the world but always observing that world around you, because it's still not quite what you knew growing up. So that's sort of, I feel, what I bring to my books. I live here, I'm part of the community here, but I still always sort of feel like an outsider and sort of always have an eye to the details that seem different to me. So.
Wow, that answer really resonates with me. I could say, not the part about the farm, I'm from Long Island, but when I first moved to DC, I moved to Bethesda, and I felt like that mom who was like just getting her own.
You get it a little closer to your...
Oh, sorry, I felt like I was that mom who was just getting it wrong all the time, like bringing the wrong kind of cupcakes to school and forgetting it was Blue Day, and the PTA, I was scared of the PTA moms, I would turn down a different aisle in the grocery store if I saw them. And my first book is about a new mom who moves to Bethesda and is immediately framed for her neighbor's murder, and nobody believes her, and all the moms in the neighborhood kind of create this whisper campaign about her. And so I just take sort of that normal outsider element and just ramp it up to 10. But it's that same feeling. And then, every step of my sort of motherhood in DC is mirrored at some point in my books. It's those same senses. Like right now I'm writing about college. And anybody who's tried to send a kid off to college in the DC area knows how freaking nuts it is. and knows the pressure, how every conversation with that mom from school is like, so, what's their top choice? Right? And you're like, I don't want to talk about this. So I like to take those kind of elements of DC and just ramp them up to 11, put a dead body in. But it's all based on my own kind of experiences. Here, feeling a little outsidery, feeling a little uncomfortable, same as Christine.
Great, those answers are so fascinating. And next I'm super curious about your past careers, because I know that both of you have had jobs that are really interesting in and of themselves, and then also you're able to take that knowledge from your past jobs and put that into your novels. So please talk about your past careers, Christine.
Well, many years ago, I started out as a television anchor and a reporter, and then I moved out here to DC, and I worked in the House and in the Senate and in the executive branch as a press secretary. And one of the main characters in Friends with Secrets is a television anchor who was fired when she was on maternity leave, and launches then into a new career as a stay-at-home mom. And it's a rough adjustment. And I did something similar. I worked for many years. I loved my job. I loved my coworkers. And then when my first child was born, I left that all behind to stay home. And that was the single hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And that was one of the things I wanted to explore. What happens when you go from having a job with a lot of validation and a lot of visibility and wonderful coworkers to being alone in your kitchen picking up spaghetti from the kitchen floor. And so there's a lot of my former career in this book. And then the secret at the center of Friends with Secrets, I don't want to give it away, but I will say that I showed up at a county commission meeting one Tuesday morning, and there were some women there who do something really interesting for a living. And those women rattled around inside my head for a really long time, and that was the inspiration for the secret at the center of Friends with Secrets, but I don't want to give that away. But yes, my past life as a reporter and an anchor are very much incorporated in my book.
So I was also a newspaper reporter, and I mostly covered cops, and I was a cops reporter. Then I covered some courts and trials, covered the DC sniper trial, for those of you from DC who remember that. So my real work experience is much grittier than what I write about in my books. I don't actually do kind of a one-to-one for what I did as a reporter with my books, but it does inform my books. Like, I have a sense, obviously, of how a police investigation goes, but I'll tell you honestly that my experience with law enforcement, and I appreciate everyone who works in law enforcement, but my experience with law enforcement is sometimes a little darker than maybe my genre wants it to be. So I've had, for example, an editor say to me, would a police officer really speak to somebody like that, or would that really happen? And you realize a lot of people in America's perception of law enforcement comes from like Law and Order or these TV shows, and my book, Domestic Suspense, is really not the place to kind of change that perception. And so I've had to actually rewrite my law enforcement interactions to be, I feel, a little less accurate and less true to life, but to stay within the convention of domestic suspense, because I'm not writing gritty, I'm not, writing, the Black Dahlia, I'm not writing gritty police procedurals. And so that's been an interesting experience, is taking enough from my experience, but also knowing when to leave it on the table and not put it in the book.
Thank you so much. I'd like to turn to talking about the writing process. I am so impressed at how many plot twists and turns there are in these books, and I wonder if the both of you can talk about how do you create so many different plot twists and turns? Is there, do you figure that out first and then write the book? Do you write the book and see how it goes? So what's the writing process for you? And let's start with Aggie this time.
So I always need a premise, a basic idea, sort of an opening scene, themes, but that's about as far as I need to get going. And I always start with this pretty simple twist, a pretty simple reveal, and then I just end up complicating things for myself. Like, I get to the end of the chapter and I think, a really savvy reader will see where this is going. I better make a sharp left turn here. And I just start making more and more left turns until it's like an Escher drawing, those Escher drawings. And sometimes I get to the end, I'm like, how am I going to get out of this? I've really painted myself into a corner. Somehow I always do, but nothing that I write could I have foreseen when I sat down. I can't come up with that stuff until I start writing. I can only come up with, oh, this is about a cherry blossom, a murder at a cherry blossom, or this is about a couples on a cul-de-sac. That's as far as I get when I sit down. The rest comes as I'm writing.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I wish desperately that I could say that I plot it all out chapter by chapter before I start writing, and I know exactly what's going to happen. And if there's a process, mine is the most disorganized process you can possibly have. I know what the story, I know how it starts, I know how it ends, and I generally have no idea what happens in the middle. And it's inefficient. But I'm the same way. There are two kinds of writers, we always say. There are plotters and there are pantsers. And there are the plotters who are very methodical people who know exactly what they're going to write before they start writing and they have an outline. And then there are those of us who are pantsers, and we are literally writing by the seat of our pants. And that tends to be my process. But I do find that I come up with things as I'm writing that I don't think I ever could have come up with if I had planned it out in advance. They just sort of pop into your head and you're like, oh, that could happen. And then you put it in there.
And I don't think it's inefficient. I really do think that's just the process. And I think it's okay to not know everything. I mean, if anybody here's writing, it's okay to not know when you sit down. You will find out as you start writing. I think, in our really kind of boss girl culture or boss guy culture of America with our PowerPoint presentations, we think we have to have everything organized. But that is kind of the nice thing about writing, is things do just occur to you as you're doing it, right?
Right. It's sort of like you're driving down a road at night and the headlights are on, and you can see just the part of the road that's illuminated by the headlights, but you can't see beyond that. That's what writing feels like for me. I know just enough to keep going, but I don't know actually where I'm going until I get to the end. And then I'm usually 25,000 words over and I have to cut. So that's where I'm at right now with the next book I'm working on. But yeah, it sounds like we have a similar approach.
Great, thank you. There might be some people in the audience who are writers or aspiring writers, and I'm wondering, do you have one piece of advice that you'd like to share?
Let's start with Aggie.
My piece of advice is to read a lot, both in the genre in which you're writing, but also way outside your genre. I personally love to read nonfiction, narrative nonfiction, because like mysteries and thrillers, people who write narrative nonfiction, like I just read The Worst Hard Time by Timothy Egan about the Dust Bowl. He has to get facts into the book, but still in a way that seems like storytelling, that doesn't jar you out of the narrative. And we have to do that in mysteries and thrillers. We have to drop clues and hints and get certain information established, but not take the reader out of the story. So I think that's really sort of illustrative and helpful. So I encourage people to read narrative nonfiction and also memoir. So memoir is terrific because, again, you're constrained by your life when you're writing a memoir. But I find that people who write memoir are able to access their emotions really well, and to write about that on the page. And personally, that's something I struggle with, writing about emotion. So I really appreciate these people like basically cutting their veins and opening it onto the page for me, so I can say, oh, so that's what anxiety looks like or feels like, or that's what rejection looks like and feels like in beautiful prose. So open your door to all kinds of books, be really flexible, but of course read your genre as well.
I think my advice would be, don't wait. If you want to write a book, don't wait until you have time to write a book, because you will never have time to write a book. If you want to write a book, you have to make time to write a book. I don't know any writers who actually have time to write books. But I think we do it because it's a compulsion. None of us started doing this because we thought, oh, this will be a very stable career and we'll be rich. That's why I'm going to start writing. I think we start writing because it's a compulsion. We write because we have something to say. So if you feel like you have something to say, don't feel like you need to take classes. Don't feel like you need permission. You don't need a license to write a book. Just do it. But if you wait until you have time, you're never going to have time. So if you have something to say and there is something inside your head and it won't go away, take an hour, go sit in a quiet room and write. And I think you find that getting started is the hard part, but once you get started, if you make the time, I think you'll find that it will come. And the last thing I would say too is that normal people never think I'd really like to write a book. If you're thinking I'd like to write a book, you're not normal, you're a writer. So go with it, because normal people don't have the compulsion that those of us who want to write books have. So
Thank you so much. All of that is such great advice. Both of your books really highlight friendship and family, and your characters, in your books, it really shines through how much friendship and family means to you. So I wonder if you can say a few words about, in your personal life, how do you, as a writer, how do you balance sort of, your writing career and then your family and friendship? And then also, do you have words to say about the support system of friends, maybe other friends who are writers, or maybe sometimes you want to get away from it all and not even think about the book you're writing. So I just wonder if you have any thoughts to share about friends and family. Let's start with Christine.
One of the things that I wanted to talk about in my book is the role that female friendship plays in our life. I feel like there are so many books out there that talk about the relationships between couples, but when my kids were small, my husband worked at the State Department, and he was gone all the time. And even though my husband is a wonderful, supportive person, he was gone all the time. And the people who got me through those early years of motherhood were other moms. And so I wanted to write a book that celebrates and explores the role that female friendship plays in our life, because I feel like it's often, it's not something you read about as much as you read about relationships between couples. So I wanted to explore that. The other thing that a lot of people, I do a lot of book club meetings, and people say the husbands in your book are really supportive. And I also wanted to write a book where the husbands are sometimes the good guys, because I do have a wonderful husband, and I had a wonderful father. And so I wanted to write a book with healthy marriages, and I also wanted to write a book that shows the vital importance in our lives of female friendship, and also especially if you're a mom. I mean, the only people who understand what you're going through as a mom are other moms, and I wanted to write a book that celebrates that, and that's one of the things I tried to do in Friends with Secrets.
I think that's a beautiful answer, and if Christine's answer is like a beautiful watercolor, imagine you took some black spray paint and sprayed all over it, and then you have my book, where none of the marriages are healthy, all of the friendships are toxic, everyone's lying to each other, and they're in direct competition with each other. So I am also interested in, I have great friends. One of my great friends is here today, Julie, who's been with me, my writing journey the whole time. But I like to write about the darker side of things, and this book is about 3 female friends, and ladies, we've all been in that 3-way female friendship at some point in our lives, and it can get complicated, right? And it's about that one toxic friend who's a little too jealous, a little too possessive, and she starts off just slightly nuts, and by the end she is completely bonkers. And what she manages to do is blow up every single marriage and relationship on that block. And it's sort of a beautiful mess, and it was really fun. So yeah, I am really interested in sort of the reality behind the facade. I love kind of the trope of like the perfect Bethesda Chevy Chase family with their Christmas card, but what's really going on behind closed doors. So you might want to read Christine's book as a palate cleanser after you read my book. There is a body count in my book, but yeah. My real life friends are very nice, and no one's trying to kill anyone in my book.
That's really good to hear. So, Christine, I know that this is your debut novel, correct? And Aggie, remind me, this is your fourth novel? Great. So I was wondering if you could tell me, Christine, if you could tell me what surprised you, if there was anything that surprised you in the process of writing and publishing your first novel. And Aggie, if you could tell me, was there anything that surprised you sort of the 4th time around? So, Christine.
I think what surprised me, not necessarily about publishing this book, but about the process, is when I first started writing, I thought, well, I'm not going to tell anyone I'm writing a book. I'm just going to wait until it's an Oprah book club pick and it's been made into a movie, and then I'll be like, ta-da, I wrote a book. And it took me 10 long, rejection-filled years to get a book published. it was incredibly difficult. And there were a lot of times when I thought, I must not have what it takes. I'm almost ready to give up. But I think writers are kind of like gamblers, because then I thought, well, I'm just going to write one more, and this is going to be the one. And finally, actually, it was the one. But I think what surprised me about this process is that it is incredibly difficult to get a book published with a traditional publisher. It takes a very long time. You have to have a very thick skin. And you have to do it because you love it. Because if you're doing it because you want to be successful, that's not enough of a reason to keep going when you're being rejected over and over and over again. So I think the short answer is it's better to be stubborn than to be good.
Yes, I want to just add that my first book was the fourth book that I wrote, so I also had a really long journey. My first book published was the fourth book that I wrote, so it's not uncommon at all, and so don't feel that when you see someone with a book that's out that, I mean, sometimes it does happen easily for people, but for most writers that I've spoken to, it's been a long process. I think the thing I learned writing my fourth book was you still might get crappy covers from your publisher and have to fight about it. That's the first thing I learned. My first cover looked like a UFO, and I was like, I don't know what this is. And they're like, it's a cul-de-sac, and I said, it's a thermometer. Anyway, so we got a good cover in the end. But the main thing I learned is that it doesn't get easier. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. There are aspects of it that are easier, like once you are in motion, but in some ways it's harder, because you're internalizing other people's voices, your editor, readers, and if you're writing in the same genre, you don't want to repeat yourself. At least I don't want to. So I'm like, revenge from childhood, that's out, done that. The husband who cheated, and that's out, done that. So I'm always looking for something new, something fresh, a different way of approaching things, and that's a little scary in the beginning. You're like, can I pull this off? Can I pull this new thing off? And every time, I don't know about you writing your second book, you think, what am I doing? I'm not going to be able to pull this off. This was an idea in my head, and I can't seem to get it to work on the page. And for me, I realized that's just the process. It's probably not going to change. That's just, for me, the writing process is that sense of being lost at sea in the middle of the book. So you think that would go away, but I have not found that to be the case.
Great, thank you. I wonder if you can both talk about what inspired you to be a writer. Did it happen during childhood? Were you an adult when you realized that you wanted to be a novelist? And let's start with Christine.
I was one of those kids who, when we drove to Yellowstone for a family vacation, I saw nothing because I was in the back of the car with no seatbelt on, of course, reading a Trixie Belden book. I have been a voracious reader my entire life. I tried to write my first novel in 4th grade. It was called Millicent's Revenge, and it was Anne of Green Gables meets Big Little Lies meets Trixie Belden meets Orange is the New Black. It was a mashup of all my favorite things, but I feel like I am finally doing the thing that I was created to do. I feel like I'm terrible at math. I literally can't add and subtract and do long division, but I've always been a word person, and I've always loved books. And I feel like this is kind of the only thing I know how to do. And it's hard, as Aggie talked about, but it's also such a joy to be able to sit down, even when it's hard, and do the thing that you feel you were created to do. And I truly feel that I'm supposed to be a writer. I really do. It is a joy and a privilege to be able to write something and have people read it. It's a joy.
So my answer is actually pretty similar. I also was just I wasn't a good student. I was a very mediocre student, and writing was kind of the only thing I was good at. My parents were very strict. I wasn't allowed to watch TV. I wasn't allowed to go to movies. Like, I read Grease. Okay? Do you remember, if you grew up in the 70s and 80s, they'd have like these books they'd make from the stills from the movie? I read Saturday Night Fever. Because my parents were like, not for you. So I was allowed to read anything, and boy, did I. I read Lace, I read Forever, I read books about Jim Jones and the cults. So reading for me was like sexy and fun and dangerous. So I never associated reading and writing with school. I associated with entertainment because that was my entertainment. I also wrote a novel in 7th grade, like that was loosely based on all my friends at school. like Karen became Carrie, and Alyssa became Lisa, right? And it was really, really hot. And I passed it around, and Mr. Nagrowski, my 7th grade science teacher, confiscated it, and I haven't seen it ever since. But, so yeah, writing was like kind of just my jam. I wasn't good at anything else, and I tried to write novels in the 90s and my 20s, and I got agents and didn't get them published. And actually, reporting was a fallback career for me when I was, bartending and writing wasn't working out, which is what I was doing. So yeah, I kind of don't feel like I'm that I'm a great gardener. I'm really good at growing things, but those are kind of my only 2 skills.
Thank you so much. So the writing process, there's a lot of steps in it. There's the original idea, then you have to write the first draft. There's a lot of editing, finding a publisher, working with an editor, and then sort of the final touches. I was wondering, are there parts of the process that you love the most, and are there parts of the process that you're like, ugh, I'm at this stage? Aggie, would you like to go first?
I do find drafting to be the hardest. I liken drafting to being like a Soviet refugee who goes into giant grocery store the first time and sees the cereal aisle. Doesn't know, right? It's like, I don't know. Should she be an only child? Should she have a family of 10? Should she live in New York? Should she live, in North Carolina? Too many options, right? By the second draft, I've narrowed down my options. I've closed a lot of doors, and so I can move forward. But I find that kind of original moment where I'm making all decisions, my brain can't handle it. I see every conceivable avenue I could go down. I see parallel books. Maybe that one would be better. Maybe that one. But once I've made a decision and I'm committed, then I really enjoy doing what I call the second draft, which is like coloring in the lines that I put out for myself.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I absolutely loathe getting the first draft down on paper, and it is, I have to force myself to sit down every day because I don't know where I'm going and I'm figuring it out. And I also think I am not a perfectionist, but I have some perfectionist tendencies, and when you're getting the first draft down, you have to just live with the fact that this is an ugly, stupid book. And you have to remind yourself, I will make it better later. I just have to get this down now. And it's so hard. But I feel like rewriting is my reward for writing.
Yeah.
So once I get the first draft down, then I get to rewrite. And that, to me, is where the joy comes in. I love playing with words. I love finding the one perfect word that you need. I love to rewrite, but yeah, I find the early part where I don't know where it's going, I don't know who these characters are yet, I'm not sure what's going to happen. It's painful.
So I know that both of you are working on another novel, and I know that some writers don't like to talk too much about works in progress, but I wonder if you would like to say a few words about anything that you've got going on. And let's start with Aggie.
Oh, so I'm working on book number 5 right now. It's a dual point of view in a suburban Bethesda neighborhood between a Karen, empty nester, and that's one point of view who something happens to her. She blacks out at a party and people think she's been drinking too much, but that's not really what happened. And then the other point of view is a young trans man who lives in the neighborhood who's solving his best friend's murder. I decided, a very close, my son actually asked me, why don't you ever have any trans kids who's trans in your books? And I said, okay, my next book, we're going to do that. And he said, please make it the least interesting thing about this character. And I said, absolutely. So I like this pairing of these two people, this Karen and this young guy, kind of teaming up to solve this crime. They're kind of an unlikely duo. And it's the usual, Michigas in the suburbs, people lying, murdering, cheating.
My next one, I turn it in June 1st, and it's in reasonably good shape at this point. It's going to be about 2 moms, again, dual point of view like this one is, and it is about a mom with 4 boys in travel sports, and she leaves one at a rest stop on the Pennsylvania Turnpike coming back from a travel baseball tournament, and that is her wake-up call to drop out of everything and try something different. And in the process of doing that, her neighbors get involved, and they discover a secret from 1965 on their cul-de-sac, and they have to solve that mystery while finding balance and creating community and figuring out what's important and what's not. So
We've got a little less than 5 minutes left, and I wonder if you would like to shout out any amazing books or authors that you've read lately, or any favorite books that really inspired you in your life. And Christine, would you like to go first?
One of my favorite authors is Lynn Moriarty, Big Little Lies, Nine Perfect Strangers. I adore her books because she somehow manages to make me both laugh and cry, sometimes on the same page. And for me, the best books do that. They're funny, but they're also poignant, and they're similar to our books. They're about people in the suburbs doing sketchy things, and so she's probably one of my all-time favorite authors. And I just finished one of Aggie's books, Such a Lovely Family, and it was so fantastic. I needed to get ready for this reception, and I'm in my hotel room, like putting on my lipstick because I couldn't wait to finish it. So, found a new great author.
I'd like to say the person who made me want to become a writer is Armstead Maupin. He's a writer from the 1970s. He wrote a series called Tales of the City, and that's really, when I read those books, they make you want to time travel back to San Francisco in the 1970s, and I was like, I want to do this. He was funny, and he was like, just great plots and interwoven perspectives, and I went a little darker than Armstead Maupin did, but so if anybody hasn't read him, great summer reading, I strongly recommend. A book I just finished reading was, I'm going to get the name wrong, it's Detransition Baby, but I forget the author is Tori Peters, maybe? And that was a book that, talk about a book hangover, did someone talk about a book hangover recently? That left me with it was like nothing I've ever read, and so I recommend that to anybody who's looking for something that would really, is different from anything they've been reading.
Great, thank you. So I would like to turn it over to questions from the audience at this time. So if anyone has a question, raise your hand. And yes, go ahead.
I just want to ask you about AI and fiction. How do you feel about it? Are you planning to use it in your work, or have you?
Great. So the question was about AI and fiction. Are you planning to use it? What do you think about it?
Well, I have strong feelings about AI and fiction. That's a great question. I just, I don't know where things are going or what the future holds for people who do what we do, but I feel like it's cheating. And I have an author friend who uses AI to write her monthly newsletter, and it's a terrible newsletter. It's terrible. It's boring. It has no life. It has no voice. And so I can't foresee me ever using AI for anything because I feel like it's cheating. And I also feel like, why would I want a computer to take away the part of the process which I enjoy most, which is creating things that come out of my head. So I am opposed to AI, but maybe that's also just me knowing that perhaps someday the robots are coming for my job and I just don't want to face reality. So
I have a little more generosity towards AI. I wouldn't use AI to do creative writing, but I've asked AI questions like, give me 30 Italian last names that are prominent in Long Island in the 1970s. Like, I've asked it questions like that. I think AI, you have to double check everything, but I use Claude sometimes to ask those kinds of questions, or find me 10 books that were written in the 1950s that touch on issues of Jewish life in Oklahoma. I don't think there are 10 books, but if anyone's going to find it, AI is going to find it. So I think there's a place for AI, and I think brainstorming and research, again, double check everything. AI once gave me a response about an iPad cursor blinking. I said, "Dear AI, there are no cursors on iPad," and it said, "You caught me." So I was like, okay, buddy. So I wouldn't do my creative writing on AI, and if you do research, you might want to double check it. But if you're doing historical research and you're looking for brainstorming ideas, it can be like another person in the room, a not very intelligent person in the room, but someone else you can bounce things off of. So, it's a tool. I'm sorry, but spell checks AI. Grammarly is AI. When I started out as a reporter, you had to know how to spell things. We had dictionaries, right? And you had to, your grammar, someone in the newsroom knew grammar. There was no program. That's all AI. So I do find it a little disingenuous when people freak out about AI because we've been using it for a long time to help us write. It's just, I agree to draw a hard line with creative stuff, but it is a tool.
Any other questions?
You've mentioned editors. That would be my total dread, is having, they critique, but they criticize, correct? So how do you feel when you hand your manuscript over to an editor, and how do you feel working with them?
I personally find it a relief because when I finish a book, I honestly don't know anymore if it's good or if it's not good. And so when I turn it over to an editor who I trust, who I respect, I know that they are going to make that book better. And I know that they're going to see things that I can't see because I'm so close to it by the time I've finished writing it. And then also copy editors are these superhuman people who catch things mere mortals never catch. I was a day off in this book, and because they're moms and they're on a school calendar, it would have screwed up everything. And they caught that, so I gave everybody strep throat, and that's how I got around my calendar problem in this book. But I find it very reassuring to know that when this book is out in the world, it has been through 3 rounds of developmental edits. It's been through a sensitivity reader. It's been through 3 rounds of copy edits, and it gives me confidence in what is going out in the world. So I love and appreciate the editing process. I don't know.
I'm gonna, concur with what Christine said. I think it's like a mind shift from feeling like they're criticizing you to thinking they're on your team and they're trying to make your book better. It's like they are helping you. Now, of course, you do have some disagreements sometimes with your editor. I'll tell you one funny story. In my first book, I had a mom open a box. She's being framed for murder. Her life is falling apart. She pours herself a glass of wine, and my editor said, Kristen said, would a mother really drink alcohol if her child was in the house? Come on, Aggie. And I said, oh, you're adorable. I said, that is why she's drinking alcohol. So sometimes they say things, right? But in terms of like pointing out, look, it's not Saturday for 5 days in a row, or why is she always wearing a red shirt in every one of your scenes? Or can you not start the book in bed? Every chapter she's in bed getting up. You're grateful. She helps you make a better product. So in general, editors are really great things.
I just turned in a book where people scrunch their forehead, I'm not joking, 45 times. That's the kind of things that editors save us from. Yeah.
It looks like we have a question over here.
I'm wondering, I've read all of Aggie's books. Do you have any concerns or qualms about writing about the neighborhood you live in or a real place as opposed to renaming it something else?
No. It's so fun. And the funnest part is my neighbors should come up and say, is that me? Do I do that? Am I the mean PTA mom? I go, I don't know. Are you? Like, only you. Look in the mirror. Are you the mean PTA mom? Like, it's hysterical. So I say, have no fear. Write about your mom. Write about your friends. Write about your experiences. And most people, 99% of people love it. And my neighborhood is awesome. They are my biggest supporters. They show up for me, and nobody takes it personally or seriously. They love it. They love searching for little details about people. I know that woman who's always calling for her cat. They love it. So I wouldn't worry about that if that's something that you're concerned about. I've never gotten any bad feedback or negative blowback for that.
Any other questions?
I appreciated Christine's sense of humor in your book. Was that coming naturally to you, or did you kind of have to work at that?
I love humor writers like Dave Barry is. I can't believe I'm at the same book festival with Dave Barry. I've Irma Bombeck. I loved her when I was young. Dave Barry. I love humor. I love reading humor, and so I hope that comes out in my writing. But I feel like if you can't laugh at it, all hope is lost. So you gotta laugh or you'll cry.
talked about your long journey in getting your books published, but what about people who this is their first time, and there's a lot of people who self-publish. What are your suggestions for first-time writers? What's the process? Where do they go to? I'm done. Now do I pass it off to her, or how do we find publishers?
I think that there are so many avenues available now for authors. I mean, you can self-publish or you can go the traditional route. And I think it depends on what your resources are. If you are going to self-publish, you basically are starting your own publishing company in a lot of ways. There's a big learning curve. It's an enormous investment of time, and it's also an investment of some money up front. If you go traditionally, it can take you 10 years to get published, but someone else is doing all of the expense, taking all the risk, doing all of the non-writing work. And so I think you have to evaluate what are your resources, where do you want to expend them, and then what do you want? Do you want control, or do you want to cede control and work with a publisher? Aggie, maybe you have thoughts
No,
on
I
that.
think that's absolutely right. And I think also what type of book you're writing matters too. Some books really lend themselves to self-publishing, series, romance. Other books, literary fiction, standalones, you have a tougher time self-published, I think. But if you were starting out, you had a manuscript, let's say, and you want to get published traditionally, where do you go? I would go to a Facebook group. There's a group called On Submission. There's Reddit. Reddit has a publishing and on writing forum. People have lots of great advice to how to start querying, where to find agents, how to find the right people for you. So there's a lot of resources that weren't around when we started out there now. And you might find your path through there. Like you might realize you do want to self-publish, but I would definitely, I'm sorry to promote Facebook, but it is very helpful that way. There are a lot of people with a lot of experience and they're willing to share it.
Any other questions? I just want to say these two novels are excellent, and I do highly recommend both of them. These two amazing authors are going to be signing books immediately in the Activity Center, and Politics and Prose is the bookstore. So if you walk into the Activity Center and turn to your right, you will find the bookstore. You can buy the books, and then once you've bought the books, you can go into, I believe it'll be some sort of auditorium or gym area where the book signing will
And
be.
just so you know, once you buy their books, and please do, I read both of them and I loved them. So thank you very much. And Aggie's book, is in line 1. If you want to have her sign the book, it's line 1. Christine's book is in line 2. And actually, Liza's book, she's going to have hers too in line 3. So head on over, get the books. They're great. And get them signed. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.